Yeah.
It's Nash Evans. Welcome to Laurel, Mississippi. Let's go check out the field. Hey, you ready?
What do you say, son?
How you doing? Good to see you.
Pretty good.
You look sharp. All right.
You look good.
You ready to hit it?
I might as well.
All right, let's go. It initially starts with we're just a figurehead that they see on some social media post or over a telephone or an email, and then they show up to our corporate office with their eyes wide open. They realize that we're an actual oil company, not just a fancy equity firm, because our yard has a tremendous amount of pipe and tubular goods, tanks, rigs, equipment, trucks. So we're able to walk them through our yard where all of our equipment is stored and where our crews show up in the morning time before they head out to the field. Then we get to show them our data room, which is all the data that is older than technology itself. And so before they started putting it all on computers, it was all stored in paper files. And we got room after room of paper files of well data from wells in the southeast United States. So we show them the well data room, we go over the maps, game plan for the day. We also like to show them the accounting department, the people that are doing the joint interest billings, the people that are doing the daily updates. And then from there, once they get a basis of how our corporate office runs, then we make a trip to the field. And today, we're going to do Dexter Field. We should have our crews operating on a couple different wells, a few different projects. And from there, we'll head back home and make it back to Dallas, hopefully by 7 o'clock tonight. Evans, we're in Dexter, Mississippi with Mr. Alan Floyd, and we're at the Dexter 311. So we're gonna kind of go over some stuff. So I was asking, so why did we drill here? Mr. Allen, you know more about the history of Dexter. Drilled, discovered 1960, right?
Yeah, it was basically realizing that a lot of wells were plugged, you know, for various reasons, but the common denominator that they were still producing quite a bit of oil when they were plugged. And it was either lower oil prices, mechanical problems, you know, complicated land work, all those things played a part into plugging a lot of wells prematurely as far as recovery of reserves.
So we're here on this location right here. And these other wells here that you're going to see throughout, these are all the other wells that were previously drilled in Dexter Field. And most of these were drilled 1960s, right?
60s, actually up through the late 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we went in and we looked at all the previous wells that were drilled in 1960, 1962. We look at IPF, initial production per day, 200 barrels, initial production per day, 182. And what do we realize? That these two formations were found in this well, these two formations were found in this well, but why was there not a well to be drilled there? And so why are we drilling in between wells? What are we doing with the drilling units?
Well, in some cases, we're realizing that production was made in a particular sand in one well that was in another well that had never been perforated. So that's one thing that we'll be chasing is sands that have not been produced.
So you have 4 different lines here. Yellow, red, blue, black. This well here might have only been producing from this one, and then the other one might have only been producing from that one. So that means this well here has all 4 sands, 2 of which have never been produced and 2 which have. So if you drill it, you have the probability of drilling through 4 productive zones, 2 highly productive.
Some with virgin pressure.
Yeah, 2 can be non-virgin pressure.
Right.
All right, so what's the difference between virgin pressure and non-virgin pressure?
Well, virgin pressure is original formation pressure that has never been penetrated or never has been opened, never has been perforated and tested. Whereas non-virgin just means that you have produced it and therefore you have depleted the reservoir and the pressure with it. So that's the difference in virgin and non-virgin pressure.
Ask any and every question you can. Now is a great time.
Those different levels, in that picture, the different levels you talked about, if they go down and
and they pull from one level, it doesn't seep from the others? They're kind of like separate cavities?
They are separate, yes. And you do that, normally they are separated by shale barriers where they're not connected to each other naturally. But sometimes they are, but you would, when you drill through it, sometimes you do that. But when you cement your casing, then it should be back to being isolated from each other.
And Mr. Allen actually stays on location pretty much from the time we start the hole to the time we finish it. So how many wells you think you've drilled in your career?
In my career?
Yeah.
Oh, several hundred.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So he's a pro at this. This is what he lives and breathes. But so he's actually here on location, so he sees the data at true time. If the mud changes, if we're drilling faster or slower, so as we're getting samples of the formation, he's able to pull it and we can kind of ballpark it. And it's, after you drill it, it's kind of a game of data, getting enough data from 3 or 4 different sources to verify, re-verify, because this well actually surprised us, right? This one was the one that surprised us.
That's right. After we logged it, we all went back. I say all of us, several of us went back to the microscope ourselves, and actually found the samples that, after a lot more scrutiny, we could see the oil cut on the samples.
And that goes back to data. When he's drilling the wells, we're getting certain data. After we drill them, we log the well, we verify that data, and then we see what the other wells have done. So in addition to picking the location, drilling a successful well and completing it's a completely different thing.
Absolutely.
Fair to say?
Yeah, there's, you've got to, whenever you're drilling a new hole in the ground, there's a lot of things that go into protecting all that too. You can't just haphazardly drill a hole in the ground and hope you get some good data. In order to get good data, you got to drill a good hole, and a good hole that's got good wall cake and very little washout. And see, another thing that affects the ability to produce the well is whether you damage it any when you're actually drilling through it.
Okay. What he's talking about, so right here, how it's dug out, you see how that pipe goes through?
Yeah.
If you drill too fast, what happens?
Well, if the main thing is, it's not necessarily the speed you drill through, but it's the quality of the drilling mud. Whenever you're drilling through that pay zone, you want a mud that does not let any fresh water go into that formation. That's what damages the formations, because you got all of these sands have a little bit of shale in them, which is clay. If you let fresh water touch clay, it swells it, and it actually obstructs the path in the sand that would naturally occur there if you didn't close it off with that swelled shale. So if if you've got a lot of deep holes, you actually use oil-based mud for that particular reason. But most cases in these depth of wells, if you keep water loss down, keep real good control of your mud, you got good protection.
So if you were to dig a deep hole, the dirt will eventually cave in the hole as you get deeper. Well, to prevent that from occurring, Mr. Allen drills with mud, and they constantly circulate through. So the mud, the cuttings that happen, come into the mud that he's putting in the hole, and the mud carries the cuttings back to surface to keep the hole clean as they go down. So the deeper he goes, the mud prevents the well from caving in, but you also have to put light enough in certain areas that the oil can still come back through that same area when you finish drilling it.
You don't want the oil to come in while you're drilling the well, but you don't want it to push it further away either. Yeah. You want to be perfectly balanced when you're drilling through a pay zone, so that you don't take a kick and have a well control problem, but also you don't want it to go the other way. And it's usually in wells like this, it's usually better to err on the side of being underbalanced, because with as much surface pipe as we set, we can handle a little kick. So it's better to take a little chance on that than it is to damage the formation by overburden. But we were talking about the mud. whenever you're drilling with pipe. So when you every time you all the time you're drilling, you're circulating drilling mud through the inside of that pipe down to where the bit is, and the mud is coming out on the outside of the bit, up on the outside of the pipe, and up against the hole that you're drilling. So the mud furnishes. It's 2 or 3 reasons for the mud. One is to keep the hole intact. One is to keep the cuttings coming out, and then to keep the drill string clean, so that you get efficient drilling rates.
And that's just the drilling part. So here we drilled a successful well. We logged it. So the big black thing on the bottom, it's your wellhead. And from there, like I said, man, ask any questions you see. Mr. Allen is.
The hole. Oh, this is not even here.
Oh no,
Right.
That's not there.
You
No.
can put this on the hole, and then you're starting to.
Well, the first thing you do after you drill the well, while the drilling rig is still here, if you've logged it and you see you've made a well, you run casing in it. You can't complete this well just with a hole there. So we're going to run steel casing in the well, and we're going to run it all the way to bottom. And like in this well here specifically, it's got 5.5-inch casing in it. All right, it goes all the way to bottom, and then we pump cement down the inside of it and around the outside of it to cover all the producing zones that we want to test.
When you said, does oil from one formation go to the next, when you don't have good cement and casing, that can actually happen. That's why the cement is such a viable part of the well, is we want those to be separate. So even they are separated in the earth, when you put the hole in the ground, if you don't have good cement between those intervals, they can be connected, which is not what we want to happen. So the cementing job too is a whole nother ball game of its own.
And then when you get ready to test the zones, then since you've got them isolated now with casing and cement, and you've got it under control where it can't do anything. So now you want it to flow now because you're ready for it. So you go in there and shoot holes in your casing exactly where you, based on that log, where you want those holes to be,
right there,
and let the entry come out of the well into the casing. But hopefully, are you waiting on us? Anytime you're ready. We need to be making oil. Is that right, Nash?
That's right. You want me to come do it?
Oh. No, see, if you've got a good cement job, you should never see any mud. You might see a little bit on the very initial production. You might see a little bit, and if you've drilled into a partially depleted zone, you could see a little bit. That's what I was talking about a while ago about keeping the well balanced with the mud. You want your mud weight heavy enough to keep the well from kicking, but you don't want it so heavy that it pushes mud out into the formation. And sometimes that does happen. So sometimes that calls for some remedial action. Crude oil comes in all kind of gravities.
Okay.
And there's
How's it going?
There's some
Good.
there's some oil. In fact, we've got some oil up in Bolton, Mississippi, as a matter of fact, in a different zone of the 1313 that's a lot thicker than the oil we sell out of the 13.
Black tar.
It's
and sometimes this stuff's green. Is this one green? No, this one's not. But we've had other wells where the oil's green.
Yeah.
So does all these various types of oils you get can be used for anything, or certain ones?
Depends on the quality of the crude, and so they actually measure it on location, and then they take it to a refinery and they look at it again. It can have different properties. Certain properties are good for asphalt. Other properties are good for diesel fuel and gasoline. Our job's to get it out of the ground, and if it's quality, that's what they refine. But we do know typically in a field, so Dexter field, we kind of know what the quality of the oil is.
Yes,
so you're not gambling on what the quality is.
In a large geological area. Like in Mississippi, you're going to just about know what the oil's going to look like if you find production in the Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
You pretty much know what it's going to look like. You pretty much know what it's going to look like if it comes out of the Rodessa. Which is where I think your 13.
That is right. Yeah, Rodessa 6, I think.
So you'll know, from well to well to well in a field like this, you'll know what the gravity of the oil is going to be if you make a well when you drill it.
Making money now.
There you go.
So now
That's
I
right.
feel a little better
There
about
you go.
being here today.
So the various types of crude have different values, I would assume?
Yes.
Yep.
the higher the gravity, usually the more valuable it is until it gets to a certain point. It can actually go the other way. And by the same token, the lower the gravity, the thicker it is, the less valuable it is because there's fewer. Now even that varies sometimes based on the markets, supply and demand.
But so for here, how you produce it, the wellhead is attached to the casing that goes all the way to the bottom. And inside that, can you explain to us kind of what the well diagram would look like?
Well, you've got a tubing anchor. You got tubing ran in the well, and then you got an anchor on the bottom of it. That polish rod that you see going up and down is attached to a string of rods that's attached to a pump that's got balls and seats in it, and it works just like a windmill. As it goes up and makes a stroke, when that ball seats, it pushes the fluid out the top. When it goes back down, it lifts the ball off the seat and lets fluid come in it and fills the pump back up. So that's the way it works. Very, very simple, really.
And how many strokes per minute are we going here?
I think we're going 7 strokes a minute.
7 strokes a minute. Okay.
And you can run a different based on how we'll test the well to see how much production we expect it to make in a 24-hour period, and we'll size the pump based on that.
You mentioned one of y'all used the term a free-flowing well earlier. Does that mean you don't have
Right.
That's correct.
This was doing that at what time?
Yes, that is your 12-point buck in this business is a free-flowing oil well. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
If it comes in free-flowing, you're making money while you're building production facilities, and it has enough energy that it was shelling out 100 to 200 barrels a day of oil, all in its own energy.
So once it stops free flow, you go to pumping. So
Right.
Typically over halfway done or less than halfway done?
And it has nothing to do with it. It just,
I mean, I think the old rule of thumb is something like when it quits flowing, you've got about 10% of your oil.
But after
That you've recovered. Yeah. You got, yeah.
but here's the thing, this well could still free flow now. But we put them on a pump because it's a lot more efficient too.
So it's more of a seeping, and now you're pulling it back.
Yes.
So where is the oil going? Is it?
All right, you see you see that red T kind of on the top right there?
Yeah.
All right, that's a 2-inch line going to your right.
Yeah.
It's pumping out of that line. It's going in the ground.
Okay.
All right. It's going to that vessel over there, which is a heater treater.
It's a what?
A heater treater.
Okay.
It's basically a 3-phase separator that separates gas, oil, and water.
Okay.
So the gas will come out of the top. If you see that 2-inch line coming out of the top of the line, that's where what gas it makes vents through that line, and then you've got 2 dump valves on it, one for oil and one for gas, and then your oil dumps to one of your oil tanks, and your water tank dumps to the water tank.
So you guys are pulling out crude oil, but also natural gas. Is that when you say gas, you're talking
Yes. Very minimal amount on most of these wells. It's really not commercial.
Okay.
But there's usually enough, like here, there's enough to run the engine. That's what makes
Which lowers your costs as well, because your fuel to burn is naturally produced from your well.
So you don't really sell the natural gas?
If it's commercial, we will.
What do you mean when it's commercial?
If it makes a profit. So this makes just enough natural gas to operate your production facilities, but not enough to make a profit to put a pipeline in place and to sell it.
So what is this tank here?
That's a chemical tank.
Okay. What is it?
That is a de-emulsifier. So if you've got, whenever you sell oil, it has to meet certain criteria for most purchasers. It's all a little bit different. You're allowed to have a little bit of water or BS&W in your oil, but not much. And so a lot of times when you make a little bit of water, or even when you make a lot of water, sometimes you have a problem with it emulsifying, which means you got some, the saying that oil and water won't mix. but it will tie up with each other, you know, where you can't, it's hard to separate it. Sometimes you can do it with heat, but most of the time you can do it with chemicals here. So you just put, he's injecting deemulsifier in that flow line right there to make it easier to separate when it gets in that vessel over there.
Otherwise, your production tanks are not production tanks. They're half production, half water.
So it keeps you from having to get a vacuum truck out here to pull bottoms on the tank.
Can you explain what a wire line is?
Well, you've probably heard the name Schlumberger.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the premier electric line companies, but they're not over our neck of the woods. But nevertheless, you run an electric log after you drill a well to get more data, and basically what you're getting, the data you're getting is porosity. Well, first you're identifying the lithology of the well. You're defining where you got shale, where you got sand, where you got limestone, and you're also measuring mainly porosity and permeability, and you're also measuring water saturation. So using gamma rays and sounds, they use these electric logs to evaluate the formation, how likely it is to have hydrocarbons, and if it is, the permeability and the porosity, you know, is the path, because you know this oil is not in a pool like a lot of people want to imagine it being, you know, like it being in a swimming pool or an ocean. You know, it's going to be the thickness of that formation. If that formation is like here, I think we got what, 3 lobes earshot.
Right.
That's just maybe 8 or 10 feet total.
Right.
Okay, so what that means is that for it to produce, you know, several 100,000 barrels of oil, it's got to come from a long way. So you're measuring, you may show that you got hydrocarbons there, but you got to make sure you're showing that you got a path for it to get from way out there, and that's where your permeability and porosity comes in.
That's the gap. If you were to put ping pong balls in a basket, the gap between the ping pong balls is your porosity. You have to make sure that gap is big enough that you can pull oil far enough to your wellbore to make it profitable. Yep, so we drilled that one, this one, and the first one you saw when you came in.
There were other wells that were done back in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
So they're on here too?
Yeah, we use them as data. They are no longer producing.
They were like covered or whatever.
Right. Okay. They've already produced. They've made their money. Mechanically, that's what Mr. Allen was saying. A lot of those wells are not in production today because mechanically you can't produce them. But you could re-drill the wells today and still have pretty good production.
Well, see, that ties into what we were just saying about the permeability and porosity. See, if these wells that were plugged, if they were losing production because the path to get all of it recovered was not sufficient, that means if you get out here where you're trying to pull it from and drill another well, you get some oil right there.
What about the 40 or 50 years that's passed since then? Did more sink in, and that's why you can go again? Or is
that is to some degree. But if you drill it in the same place that the last one was, a lot of times you'll get a nice initial production, but it'll go down in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Go really, really fast.
Yeah, exactly. So what you guys are drilling here, compared to what was done 40 or 50 years ago, is you're really getting different pockets, or I don't know if that's the right terminology. You're getting oil that was here when they were here.
That's right.
They just didn't know where to go.
We're just drilling the property lines, honestly. So you have 40-acre units for your oil wells, right?
That's right.
We shifted things a little bit, is one way to say it. So you can drill one well per 40 acres. Mm-hmm. By moving them some, we're able to drill closer to the property lines and move these 40-acre units, so we're able to drill in between two very successful wells where, due to held by production, you couldn't drill. So if you're producing a well, you reserve a right that somebody else can't drill within the confines of that 40-acre unit.
Right. In other words, when we got 40, these were always 40-acre units, but they were very seldom drilled right in the center of the 40. They were drilled in one corner or the other of the 40. So they might have drained, if they were 330 feet from the 40 line, that meant they were 1,300 feet from the other line. So that means if they drained the area around 330 feet around the circumference of that well, a lot of this over here in the other corner never was touched, never drained over there.
And that's why we call it a development. We're not finding the oil. We know the oil's here. We're not trying to see the depths of the field. We're just pinning in new wells that should have been drilled, but due to change of hands, transfer of companies, sellouts, and buyouts, the work stopped. And being a smaller independent versus a larger public company, it's perfect for us.
Gotcha.
It's expensive to do the work, but it's too expensive to keep the small guys out, but it's not big enough production for the big guys to come in. So it's kind of tailored to us and just 2 or 3 other little companies that are the right size to play this kind of field.
You know, a lot of the big guys, you know, you're going back to the 60s and 70s, you know, you got to remember oil was $7 a barrel. So, you know, economics just ain't there when it's $7 a barrel. And once it gets down to where it's not flowing anymore, you know, it makes it a lot more, overhead's a lot higher. It's harder to make a profit at that.